You know, we're living in this absolutely incredible new space age. You've got companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Rocket Lab. And they're not just launching rockets anymore. They're building a whole economy up there in orbit, with customers ranging from NASA all the way to private citizens. It is just an explosion of innovation. But what happens when one of those spectacular launches goes, well, spectacularly wrong?
So let's just ask the big question right up front. A private commercial rocket goes off course. It crashes, and it causes millions, maybe even billions in damage. Who writes the check? I mean, is it the company that built it, their investors, or is it someone else entirely? And this isn't just some hypothetical. It's a super high-stakes question at the very heart of this entire industry.
And you know, the answer is hiding in a really surprising place. It's not in some hyper-modern tech law, which you might expect. Nope. It's actually buried in international treaties that were written way back in the 1960s and 70s. You know, a time when space was purely the domain of superpowers, not Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. Okay, let's dive into this.
So we're going to look at this really bizarre mismatch. Brand new, cutting-edge rockets being governed by some very old rules. We're about to see exactly why these Cold War-era treaties are still the law of the land for today's commercial space boom.
Okay, so this slide really gets to the core paradox of this whole new space race. On one side, you have these laws from the 60s, like the Outer Space Treaty, that say the government, the state, is on the hook for all the risk. But on the other side, you've got this booming private industry that's getting all the rewards. It's basically a system that privatizes the profit but socializes the risk. And that's a potential recipe for a massive public bailout.
So what exactly is a launching state? Well, the definition is incredibly broad. It's not just the country that builds or owns the rocket, it's also the country from whose territory the rocket is launched. So what does that mean? It means if a private company launches from U.S. soil, the United States government is on the hook, period. There's no escaping it. The government is always a liable party.
Okay, so if the U.S. government is stuck with this massive financial risk, how do they protect taxpayers without just killing the whole industry? Well, that's where the modern workaround comes in, a mandatory insurance safety net.
Before a company can get a launch license from the FAA, that's the Federal Aviation Administration, they have to get insurance, and a lot of it. The FAA calculates what they call the maximum probable loss, and then requires companies to be insured for up to $500 million for third-party claims. This is kind of the first tier of protection, and it forces the private company to shoulder that initial chunk of financial risk.
And this graph from the FAA, wow, it shows you exactly why this insurance is so critical. Just look at that projected growth. Back in 2023, there were 113 licensed launches. The high-end forecast for 2028, 338. We're talking about a potential tripling of risk in just 5 years. More launches just mean more chances for something to go wrong, and the system has to be ready to handle that.
But here's the problem. This insurance fix, as good as it sounds, might not be enough, especially if something truly catastrophic happens. So let's explore the cracks in the system.
You know, the insurance model has some really serious weak points. First of all, how do you even price the risk of, say, a city-leveling disaster? It's almost impossible. Second, insurers are for-profit businesses, right? So they write these complex escape clauses into their policies to avoid huge payouts. And then there's this thing called subrogation, which is a total nightmare for space companies. It basically means that after an insurer pays out a claim, they could have the right to seize the company's most valuable assets, like their rocket technology. To top it all off, a lot of these insurers don't even have the deep expertise to accurately price the risk of these brand new vehicles in the first place.
So the FAA recognized these challenges, and they tried to modernize. Their big attempt is this massive regulatory overhaul called Part 450. You can think of it as the government trying to build a whole new rulebook for a whole new era of spaceflight. So the really crucial thing here is the shift in philosophy. The old rules were prescriptive. Think of it like a recipe. A prescriptive rule would say your rocket's fuel tank must be made of this specific metal. The new Part 450 rules, on the other hand, are performance-based. They say, hey, your rocket's fuel tank has to withstand these specific forces. We don't care what it's made of, as long as it's safe. So it's meant to be way more flexible and encourage innovation.
But in practice, the transition has been pretty rough. The Commercial Spaceflight Federation points out that these new rules have actually caused severe delays in getting licenses. And for companies that are trying to innovate really quickly, these delays are incredibly expensive and, as they put it, crippling. So the new system, which was actually meant to speed things up, is in some cases grinding them to a halt.
So if the old treaties are a bad fit, the insurance fix is full of holes, and the new regulations are causing a traffic jam, is there another way?
Well, some legal scholars are proposing a completely different financial model, a collective safety net. Here's the basic idea of how a space liability fund would work. First, every space company contributes a small percentage of their revenue or profit into a shared pot. Step 2, that money pulls together and grows into a permanent non-profit fund. Now this is key. Unlike insurance premiums that just vanish every year, this creates a lasting financial cushion for the whole industry. And third, if there's an accident, the fund pays victims directly. The focus is on compensation, not on profit.
This table really breaks down the difference, doesn't it? The insurance model we have now is all about individual responsibility, and it's driven by profit. A liability fund, though, is based on collective responsibility, and its whole purpose is just to make victims whole. Now, of course, this isn't some magic bullet. I mean, trying to get hyper-competitive companies to agree on how much to contribute and creating the international agreements to govern a fund like this, that would be a massive political challenge. But the concept itself is a fundamental shift, moving the focus away from avoiding payouts and towards ensuring recovery.
And that really brings us to the core tension of this entire story. Rocket technology, private investment, innovation, it's all advancing at light speed. But the laws, the regulations, and the financial systems that are designed to protect all of us down here on the ground, well, they're struggling to keep up. They are lagging far, far behind.
So as we celebrate this amazing new era of private space exploration, we have to ask a final, pretty critical question. Is the system we've built, this patchwork of old treaties and modern insurance, is it truly strong enough to withstand the inevitable crash? Or is a major disaster just waiting to expose the massive gaps in our foundation?